So I remember when I was younger, I used to look at pretty much every single other person around me who was older than me, and I used to think that they had their entire lives together. I remember I used to think like, oh yeah, I'll understand what I want to do, or I'll have my life together and have all my ducks in a row sort of when I get to their age. And now I feel like I can safely say that's not really the case. Even though I'm at their age or I'm old enough, I still have no idea what I'm doing. And so I think it's pretty funny because I think people like to act like they know exactly what they're doing. Like they don't need anyone else's help. Like they've been here before, they know what they're doing, they know the deal. And I don't think that's true. I really sort of believe that everyone's figuring it out. And so I wanted to sort of make this video and talk about this idea of knowing what you're doing, or quite literally having no idea what you're doing, because I think this is something that's especially prevalent in the world of engineering. Again, I think no one likes to act like they don't have the answers, or no one likes to be seen as someone who doesn't know how to answer a question, or doesn't know what they're doing, or doesn't have a path forward, or doesn't have a career plan. And I'm mentioning this because I'm not looking to be consoled. I'm not sort of here to vent. I'm not worried. I'm sort of just taking it each day as it goes, and I'm figuring it out just like everyone else. But I do think that this is something that I wish I thought about earlier and sort of internalized, because I think ultimately once you understand that no one really knows what they're doing, everything becomes a little bit easier. And I think that's really because of the fact that when you realize that no one else knows what they're doing, you inevitably sort of worry less, you feel less anxious, and you feel more comfortable. And I think all those things are good things. So I sort of wanted to talk about this with you guys today, because again, this is something that I wish I realized a lot earlier in life. And so I think this feeling of like not knowing what you're doing sort of spurs from the fact that basically the first 18 and 21 years of your life, generally speaking for most people, is extremely formulaic, right? You're sort of going to elementary school, and then that becomes middle school. Middle school turns to high school. High school turns into going in, finding maybe your first job, or going to a college for 4 years or so. And really after that, that's sort of the point where the formula ends, right? There is no right answer. There is no next thing to do. There is no next achievement like you're playing a video game or something. And after you're sort of done with that formula, or those first 18 or 21 years of your life where everything is sort of, generally speaking, predefined or predetermined for you, and you just sort of go through the motions and do them, you don't really have the next marker in the sand that is, okay, in 3 years you become a mid-level engineer, and then in 5 years become a senior engineer, or whatever it might be, right? It's literally the Wild West. You can do whatever you want. And I really think that the only marker in the sand that people tend to look forward to, at least at a high level, is like, okay, I'm working and then I'm going to retire eventually, right? Whenever that might be for you. And it's this weird shift that everyone goes through where you're no longer just have these arbitrary marks of good and bad, right? You don't get an A or an F on a test. You just sort of live your life, and sort of whatever you want to do is up to you, and whatever is good or bad, you sort of decide. And I think really of all the fields out there, I think software engineering does a really good job of making you feel like this is not okay. I feel like no one in engineering really feels super comfortable saying, I don't know the answer to something. I think most people in engineering don't like admitting when they need help. And so I guess what I'm sort of saying is I feel like the majority of people in the engineering field like to act like they know exactly what they're doing, but in reality, I like to think that no one really has any idea at all. And I'm not really sure if this is true or not, but sort of my 2 cents as to why this is sort of because people have this perception about you, if you're a software engineer, that you have to be smart, or that you have to have the answers, or that sort of like, you're good at math and you could put 2 and 2 together and there's always sort of a result to get to. And so I think from that, I guess people in general are expected to know the answers or think that you have the answers, when in reality, I don't think you do. And this was definitely my experience throughout college. And I remember computer science being really hard for me. And I've talked about this in a handful of other videos at this point, so I don't really want to rehash all of it now. But the TLDR is basically that I thought things were really hard. And looking back on it now, it's hard for me actually to discern what really was hard for me and what was hard because I thought it should be, if that makes sense. Because people had this perception of, oh, you study computer science, Kevin, you probably live in the library. And so in my head, that sort of reinforced me to think I should probably live in the library. I study computer science. Or if I had a lab that seemed difficult and I had a classmate who said, man, this is going to take me 12 hours to do, I all of a sudden would think, I should probably spend 12 hours on this. And that's not to say if my mind was changed somehow or I magically thought differently, I would get things done really fast. I still think I would have struggled pretty hard. I remember there was one night in college, or I guess it's 2 nights, that I literally slept in the library back to back, and that was probably the darkest days of college. That was for a data structures assignment, which was horrible and at this point means nothing, but that's, those are the arbitrary marks of good and bad back then. But anyways, I think that largely I sort of decided things were hard, not always because it was really hard for me. But I decided that it was because of the perception people had. I actually think a lot of this sort of thinking kind of comes from the way that coding or programming, software engineering is portrayed in media, right? You have shows like Mr. Robot or movies like The Social Network that can sort of just portray some seemingly average kid, although I guess, he went to Harvard, so he can't be that average, but some kid who's in college who gets, buzzed off a beer or two and just sort of write an application that scales to billions of users all because of a girlfriend that broke up with him. And I don't know about you, but I don't think that there's millions of Mark Zuckerbergs running around right now. Or like Mr. Robot, you just have this guy who like works in an IT department or like at this corporate company and is doing some sort of tech something for them, or is an engineer and like just kind of casually hacks every company that he wants to or every person he meets, because that's what you could do as an engineer. Everyone can. It's fun. And that's what you can do, right? We can all do that. Yeah. So I guess tying this back a little bit to the fact that no one knows what they're doing, I don't think Mark Zuckerberg did. I think he just sort of did something and it worked. I don't think he sat down knowing what he was going to do or had any idea what he was going to sort of drunkenly create that was going to ultimately change his life and even the world. And so for me as an engineer, I'm 100% still learning every day. And I think that that's a real thing that everyone goes through and is extremely common throughout the world of software engineering, whether or not people like to admit it. There's things that you have to learn. There are things that you don't know, and that's okay. And you sort of continuously learn them on the job. I think something else that's really funny about software engineering is at one point, I think it probably was very realistic to sort of be like this full stack developer. And I'm not saying you can't now, but I think that the things that you can know now are generally speaking, 100%, in my opinion, going to be a subset of all the things that are available. I think the computer science world has expanded so much, it's impossible to actually get your arms around every single thing, every single topic, every single field, umbrella, subfield that is somehow related to software engineering at all. It's not really feasible anymore. Whereas in the early days of the web, if pages were maybe just HTML and CSS and you had to know how to create a server or write to a database, like that's way more manageable. And sure, there's way more abstractions now and we don't have to do super low level stuff, but at the same time, there's no way that you're going to know everything about everything. It's just impossible. And I literally think every day this sort of just gets harder and harder because there's more innovations, there's more languages, there's more frameworks, and there's more things ultimately that you could know that realistically, let's face it, you don't. And so I think because of this, it's really important to sort of just think and take every day one day at a time. And it's okay that you don't know what you're doing the same way that I don't know what I'm doing, and the same way that no one else knows what they're doing, because we all don't know what we're doing together. And again, sort of like I said back in college, engineering did not come naturally to me. I definitely think I could have done things to help myself more and to expedite my progress more and to help me understand and internalize the information I was learning more, but it didn't, and that's okay. And I posted something on LinkedIn the other day basically summarizing this, but I really think that coding and software engineering is largely this thing that doesn't really make sense and then it just sort of clicks. And I think a lot of software engineering is sort of just sticking with it and figuring it out as time goes along. So just know that that's all you have to do. Just keep working hard, hang in there, and things will click eventually. So I think just take solace in that. No one really knows what they're doing. So think about anyone in your life, and chances are they don't actually know what they're doing. Your parents have actually never been the age that they currently are before. Fun fact. You don't know anything, I don't know anything, and that's okay. We're all just here sort of figuring it out. And I think that's important to mention because I think it's easy to look at certain people and think that they have everything figured out. So I don't know. I guess this is just a video that I thought about this a lot, and I think this is something that I think about today too. I don't really know exactly where I'm steering the ship, but I have a general direction. I have an idea of where I want to get to, and that might change in a year, 2 years, 5 years, and that's okay. I think the important thing is just when you realize that, sort of course correct and go on from there. So in short, I have no idea what I'm doing as a software engineer. I'm sort of learning as I go day by day, taking it one day at a time, and I hope that you guys are doing the same. All right, so that's it for this sort of rambly, crazy video. This is just something that I think about a lot, and I thought maybe other people do too. This is something that I definitely wish that I knew earlier in life, because I think a lot of it sort of just makes you feel more comfortable, less anxious, less worried. And those are all good things. So I hope that that helped you guys feel a little bit better. If you're sort of stressed right now in your job or not knowing something or trying to pick up something that's sort of difficult. So there it is. So if you guys enjoyed this video and found it helpful, do me a favor, leave the video a like and subscribe to the channel for more. We'll see you guys next time.
Wait, I want all the smoke. I smoke